Hello and welcome to the Farrier and Blacksmith modelling place tutorial. Today I'll be showing you a step-by-step guide onto how to create this little topper for the top of your cake. This is the first tutorial I have ever done, so I do apologise in advance for any dodgy camera angles. So the first thing that you'll need to do is roll out some blue modelling paste. I'm using Saracino for all of this model. And I'm just making the legs a bit thinner towards the end and leaving a little lump in the middle because that will give some definition to his bottom. So get the legs as wide or as thin as you need them. And then I'm just chopping off any excess. Making sure that they're also the same width on both sides. Just pushing it in to double check that length again. So I'm just pulling over the base that I've created and just thinking about where I want those knees to bend. And then I'm just marking with my finger the length that I want to cut those to. So now I can see those marks, so I'm just going to cut across those with my scalpel. And I'm just using my Dresden tool to now start to add just a little bit of detail of where his crotch lines are going to be. Although you don't actually see this at the end. And I'm now using the ball tool just to put a little hole in the bottom. I'm pushing the outer trouser leg onto the ball tool to thin it out as well, as that will sit over the boots. So pushing it in and then just pushing the edges next to my fingers to thin out the trouser bottoms. Then I'm using the Dresden tool again just to show myself where the backs of his legs are going to be. And giving a little bit of shape to his bottom. Sorry, I did slightly go off screen there. I'm now just pinching where I want the knee to be, which is just in front of the lines that I made on the back of the leg. So pinch into the sides and then just pushing from either edge to make a little knee shape. Bringing in the base again. Sorry about that. And now I'm just positioning where I want those legs to actually sit and pulling up the bottom part to give him a bit of a waist. Squeezing in at the sides and at the back, just because his stomach will start there, top of his hips. So it needs to be just that little bit thinner and not so bulbous on top. And I just wanted to smooth out where I'd put those markings there. So just using the side of my finger to smooth out any notches that I may have made when I've been repositioning those legs. Okay, so now I'm bringing across his boots that I've made earlier. I've just dabbed a little bit of water on top and just popping that underneath that little hole that we made in the bottom of the legs. Sorry, my hands are getting in the way there. As I say, this is the first time I've done a tutorial, so I realise I need to work on my angles a little bit more. So I'm just using water here to fix everything together. The Saraceno is still soft, so it only needs a bit of water really. Okay, so just double checking that I'm happy with the position of those legs. There is a little dent there that I'm just trying to work out, which is why I keep smoothing it over. But he will have an apron on at the end, so it doesn't matter too much at the moment. And now I'm just using the Dresden tool, just placing in a couple of little pockets in case they can be seen with the apron. I wasn't sure at this stage whether I'd be able to see them or not, so I thought it best to put them in anyway. So a couple of little pockets, and then I'm using the stitching tool just to put the seam down the sides of the legs to make them look a little bit more like jeans. Just gives them a bit of extra detail. So just doing that along the outside of both of the legs. Again, apologies about camera angles here. I'm just doing the other outside leg. And then a line on the inside of the leg as well. Really not happy with that little dent there. Those are the tool boards that I made earlier, just shimmying those out of the way. I've got them there for size reference. Okay, so there's his legs and his boots done. I've just got a little bit of the brown Saraceno that I've used for his boots. And I've got some tiny little teardrop shapes, and that's corn flour I've just put down there. Everything was starting to get a bit tacky because these are so small. So I'm just making them a little bit flatter with the rolling pin. Gone completely off screen there. So there's one. And then I'm going to do the same with another little piece, and these are going to be the tongues for on top of the boots. So just rolling out another little teardrop shape, putting it into the corn flour and rolling it a bit flatter. This can be a little bit fiddly. Making sure they're roughly the same size. Oh, something going on outside. And then just using a little bit of water again to stick those onto the tops of the boots and ever so slightly on the bottom of the jeans. And I'm just turning the top of the tongue out there and flattening the very bottom part, making sure it goes to the end of the boot. That had quite a bit of corn flour on that one, so I was just trying to brush some of that off. So down to the end of the boot, and then just turning the tongue out ever so slightly at the end. I did have a little glitch here with some editing, also something I need to practice. But I just rolled out some black Saraceno, rolled a really thin sausage, and then chopped off either side with the scalpel to create little black laces. 3 on each boot. Okay, and now I'm just rolling out a white bit of Saraceno. I have also put a skewer through the base that hopefully you can see there. And I'm just measuring how long I want his torso to be now. This is going up to shoulder height. And just pinching at the sides where I want his shoulders to be. I went completely off camera again, I do apologise about this. Hopefully you can see enough. Again, it was getting a bit tacky, so using my little pot of corn flour there. So that's where the shoulders are going to be, at the top there. So I'm just getting the right shape for the sides. There was a tiny little black piece from the laces that got on there, so just taking that off and smoothing it out again. And then just using the ball tool here, just like we did with the trousers. I kind of made a dip in the bottom, and then I'm just pushing the edges to thin them out a little bit. This is the bit that's going to go onto the trousers, so it makes it look like the shirt's hanging over the top. Oh. Just checking the size against the model before I put it on top of the skewer. Popping a little bit of water on and onto the skewer. And then I'm just going to use this rubber-ended tool just to put a line up the back for where the spine would be, and pop in the shoulder blades, and then just smooth those out so it's not such a harsh line. And then pop that over the top of the skewer through the middle. And then I'm just smoothing down the bottom of that t-shirt over the top of the trousers. And if it's got misshapen at all through pushing it down, now's the time to just smooth those little bits out. And just readjust that shape. I'm just pinching out the shoulders again here, just so it's a bit wider at the top, and there's a clear definition of where I'm going to be putting the tops of the arms. And then using that rubber tool again, the pointy one, just to redefine those lines. Now I'm just rolling out some flesh coloured Saracino. All of my Saracino comes white, and then I colour it myself. So all of the colours you see here today are mixed. Popping a bit of water around the top of where the neck will be. And if you can see there, I've rolled out a little sausage shape and just pinched the bottom to make that almost like an upside down mushroom, is the best way to describe it. And all I'm going to do is push that bit down the bottom to make the tops of the shoulders. We are going to be putting a little, not quite a collar, but the top of the shirt on to hide the seam there. So this is like the neck and shoulder line. And then I'm just pushing the top of the neck up around the skewer, because we can come back to that a bit later on. So it doesn't matter what the very top looks like. Just smoothing that down. And then I've just got some white Saracino here. Just warming that up a little bit. And starting to make a long sausage shape, very long and very thin. Again, apologies about camera angles. Oh, there you go, I did actually fix that one there. So long, thin sausage. And this is going to be going around the bottom of the neck at the top of the shirt. I've cut that at both ends just to get a bit of a neater finish. Putting a little bit of water around the bottom and base of our neckline. And then covering that over. It did need to be a little bit longer. With our little sausage of Saracino there. Then using the Dresden tool, I just wanted to add a couple of extra little details and make it look like one of those thin woolen tops. So I'm just doing a couple of little indentations around the top of that sausage to add that extra detail. So here I'm just rolling out a ball of flesh coloured Saracino, just thinning that out slightly to make the face shape. A little line across just above halfway to mark where I want the eyes to go, and a thumb pinching down on either side. To get the ridge of the nose. I'm now going to use the Dresden tool to push up and start to shape the bottom of the nose. And just push in the corners. and smoothing out any marks that I've made around the nose. So I'm just concentrating on the nose shape here, making it a bit more pointy, and then using that rubber tip just to smooth out those creases. I'm now using a scalpel just to cut off from either side of the face, as I wanted the chin to be pointier. It's a young male that I'm doing in this particular video, so I tend to do their faces a bit thinner at the bottom, and just smoothing off so there's no sharp, harsh edges. I'd obviously gone into concentration mode here and completely forgotten about the camera again. Just readjusting those eyes again there, and making sure the face is completely smooth where I want it to be. Then just using a scalpel to cut a line where I want that mouth to go, and opening it up slightly. Then using the Dresden tool to open that even more. Sorry, my hand completely covers this. And now I'm just pushing upwards underneath to form a lip, and then smoothing where those marks have been left underneath. So that's just made the bottom lip there. I hope you were able to see that. Then I'm pulling out from underneath and pushing up to create a top lip. And I'm just making those corners of the mouth a little bit more defined, I think is the word I'm looking for. I wanted him to look really cheery. Making sure that I'm keeping the shape of the face as I'm doing this mouth. Then I'm using that rubber tool just to put a couple of little dimples in either side of the smile as well, just to really emphasize the fact that he's happy. And smoothing out any marks that I may have made. Then using the ball tool, I decided that one was a bit too big, so a slightly smaller ball tool to put in the eye sockets. tool just to make the shape of the eyes a bit straighter at the bottom. I wanted this to look a bit more like a caricature. So I wanted those pointy corners to the eyes. So I'm just popping a touch of water inside the mouth. And then I've got a tiny bit of black Saracino, which I'm going to pop in. And that's just going to give a shade to the back of the mouth because I really do want him to have a big smile. So I'm just popping that in and making sure it reaches both corners of the mouth. He'd lost one of his little dimples, so I'm just popping that back in as well. And just ensuring that the mouth shape is how I want it to be still. I've just got a tiny bit of pink Saracino now, rolled it into a ball, put a line down the middle with the Dresden tool, and I'm just popping that inside the mouth and pressing it down. And that will be the tongue. Just using the end of the Dresden tool to push that in a little bit more, as I do want to get some teeth in front. Be a nice toothy smile. So there's a tiny little bit of white Saracino here. Rolling it into a tiny little sausage. This does need to be quite thin. Then using the scalpel to trim it roughly to the length that I want it to be. Tiny touch of water on the top and on the bottom, just on the inside of the lips. That's just a tiny bit too long. And just using the Dresden tool to place it exactly where I want it to be. And then the sharper end to put a couple of little indentations so it looks like little teeth. This bottom tooth's wanting to be a little bit more fiddly for me here. Just popping it into place with the end of the Dresden tool there. So now I've got a tiny little bit of the white Saraceno. I'm dabbing a little bit of water onto the sockets of the eyes, rolling a smooth white ball, and just pop that inside, flatten it down, and I'm just using my finger to make sure that that goes into the corners that we created earlier. Same with the other side. Always looks a bit spooky at this stage, I think. And I'm going to wait for those to dry and then paint on the details with, I believe they're fractal colour pens. So I'll paint on his pupils, paint on his eyebrows, and give him some hair with some more brown Saraceno. But that's the main face shape there. Okay, so I've just got out some black modelling paste here. This one is actually pre-made black, and it is Renshaw Extra modelling paste. I buy white Saraceno but black Renshaw. And I'm just making the Blacksmith anvil here. So I'm starting with the legs at the bottom, where I've pinched either side and just creating an arch with my finger through the middle. Then pushing in at either side and pinching the top to spread that out. At this stage it does remind me a bit of the Go-Go's that I used to play with when I was younger, but I've just made that shape there, so the feet are at the bottom. There. Just pinching to thin out a little bit and cutting across this edge now. This flat edge is where the little horn part goes. That's probably not the correct terminology, but I don't study blacksmith or farriering. So nice flat edge there, and I'm just cutting off the ends of the feet just to make those look like sharp edges as well. So now I'm rolling out another piece of black modelling paste. I'm rolling it quite thin, hopefully you can see that there. Placing this upside down on top so I can get the right size. Apologies about that. The right size and cut around the edge. And this is going to be a metal plate on the very top of the anvil. So just neatening that up now that I've got the correct measurements. And it is supposed to be metal, so the edges do need to be clear cut on this. And before I stick it down with water, I am just checking that the size matches up correctly. A bit too long. So now that I'm happy with that, I'm just going to get a little bit of water, brush that along the top of the anvil, and attach the metal top. just to give it that sharper edge and that tiny little bit of more detailing. Gather up all my pieces. Just seeing how black it makes my hands go. Warming that up again. And we're going to make the horn part of the anvil, whatever the correct terminology for that is. Just checking what size I want. Rolling it into a ball first. And then pressing just on the end to turn it into like a teardrop kind of shape. I think that went a bit too thin there. So we'll try that again. There we go, just giving it a bit of a pinch to get the defined shape at the end. That looks about the right size. Just chopping the end so it's a flat surface. And that should fit on smoothly. So another drop of water. And attaching that. Now I think I'd put slightly too much water on here. So it wasn't quite staying where I wanted it to. Just getting the shape how I want it. And getting sticky in the process. Checking that I'm happy with the arches at the bottom. And there's a little hole in the top of anvils as well. I have to ask my brother what that's for. But just adding that in. Okay, so I did put too much water on that. Leaving it over there on the greaseproof paper to dry. And I just got a little bit of kitchen roll just to hold that end piece in place while it dried. Kitchen roll was giving me a bit of trouble too. So I got a spare piece just to hold the kitchen roll in the place that I wanted it to go. So I'm just about to use this platinum colour splash edible powder dust. And I'm going to mix a little bit using this tiny little brush to add some detail to my tools. I mix it with vodka. It does look like I'm drinking some there, but I'm not. I am just pouring it into that cap just to control the amount that I'm mixing with my powder. Okay, so forming a little paint. And then I'm just going to paint over all of the grey screws and hooks and things that I have on my tools, just to give it that extra little detail and a nice finish. Okay, so I just have another flesh piece of Saracino here, and I'm rolling it into a long thin sausage. I don't know if you've noticed, but my cake mat is no longer here, so it was a little bit trickier to roll this out than normal. My lovely 4-year-old decided it would be a good thing to rip apart. So I now need to get a new one. So I'm just cutting that down. You can't see my model there, but I am just measuring up to get the length that I'd like these to be. These are going to be his arms. Oh, camera falling over, sorry. Making sure they're both the same length. Don't want any wonky arms. Just double checking that that is definitely the length I would like. Now I'm just rolling here to get a little bit of a dip where the wrist would be. Flattening down the end for the hand. Cutting a little triangle out for the gap between the thumb and the fingers. And then putting the lines in for where the fingers should be. And then I did go off camera again, sorry. Oh, there we go. I'm just rolling so they look more like actual fingers rather than bricks. Oh, I'm rather clumsy, I've noticed. There we go. That one was a bit too long. Finding where the elbow needs to be. Doing another little indentation for the inside of the arm. And then folding where I want that elbow to be. Just double checking the length again. It was a bit too long. I'm going to be giving him a sleeve, so rolling out some white Saracino here. Taking it into a little cone shape. And then using a small ball tool, without dropping it, like we did with the trousers, to put a hole in the middle and then thin out the edges of the sleeve. Just checking the size of the sleeve up against the model as well. Then I've got a little cocktail stick just to ensure that these two stay together. Trimming that with the secateurs. And then dipping the cocktail stick in water, popping one end into the inside of the sleeve, like so. Getting a touch more water just around the inside of that sleeve as well as on the cocktail stick, and then placing that into the arm just to give it that little extra bit of strength. Just flattening down that sleeve onto the arm as well. Move this up so you can see what's going on. Bit of water onto the shoulder. Thinking about where I want that arm to go, pushing down the shoulder and securing it onto the torso. Now I'm just going to reposition this arm before I actually stick it down. Making that shoulder look like it's actually part of the top rather than just an addition. I wasn't entirely sure where this arm would sit right. I'm just kind of toying around with it before I actually stick it there. Put a bit of water down when you're happy. And then I thought it'd be quite cool to have him having a thumbs up there. With his board underneath him, seeing as he's worked so hard on it. So there you go, he's got his thumbs up now. I'm just making sure his arm's back in the right position now that he's got a thumbs up. So then we're just going to do the same with the other arm. Pinching where we want the wrist to go. Okay, so I've sped this hand up because it's the same as the other one. Pinching where you want the wrist to go. Cutting a triangle between the thumb and the fingers. And then rolling those. So they look more like fingers and less like little boxes. Then finding where you want the inside of the arm to be. Pinching for the elbow. Cutting where the top of the arm is. Rolling the ball of white Saraceno for the sleeve. Making sure there are no creases. Turning it into that teardrop shape. Using the ball tool to make a little hole. Pushing against your fingers to thin out the sleeve. touch of water inside. Add in the skewer, or the little, not chopsticks, what are they called? Toothpicks. And then I'm going to attach that to the other shoulder. Pressing down. Thinking about where I want it to go first. Popping the water on to help it stick. So I've just mixed up some orange and brown to make the colour that I'd like his apron to be. And I'm just rolling that out as thinly as I can with corn flour underneath to stop it from sticking. I do want this to be quite thin, but it is a workman's apron, so we don't want it to be really loose. It's more leathery than it is fabric. Cutting across the top, and then now cutting down and out to the sides to create that apron shape. Same on the other side. Neatening up the edges. That one still wasn't quite straight. And then cutting along the bottom. Neatening up the top again. I'm now going to hold that up against my model just to check the height of that top bit, and it was slightly too long, so I'm just readjusting the height of that. Now that I'm happy with it, I'm just putting on some water just over the top of the torso and down and around his legs where the apron's going to be sitting. There we go, you can see him now. You can just about see where I've put that water as well. Sticking that on. I should have done this bit before the arm really. I only thought about that afterwards, but because I'd recently put on the arms, it wasn't too bad. So just smoothing that so it sits along all the creases that I created earlier. So you still get the shape of his figure and it's fitting him, because we are about to put some ties on him now, as in apron ties. So rolling out another bit of that tan, I suppose it is, tan colour. Getting better with those camera angles now. Nice thin sausage. Again, it's so much trickier without my cake mat. Going slightly off camera again. So easy to do that. Other people make this filming look so easy. So I'm just putting a little bit of water, there you go, around the neckline where I want the apron to sit. and at the top of the apron where I'm going to be attaching it. Oh, butterfingers again. So just pressing that on, hooking it around, and then pressing down slightly onto the front of the apron again, making sure it's sitting where I want it to. And then I'm just going to use my scalpel just to cut and neaten off the ends, trying to make sure that I'm not actually going through the apron as well. And I need to just do the same on the other side as well, ever so slightly. Just gives it a bit of a neater finish. There we go. I'm just turning round to the back now so you can see what I'm doing here. Rolling out another long thin sausage in that tan colour, and we're going to be doing the tie at the back of his apron now. It is possible to do this with his arms on, but it probably would have been easier if I'd have done this bit first, in hindsight. So I have just put a little bit of water on the back of his shirt there. Just taking that all the way round to the other side. And using the scalpel to cut off the excess, making sure that it meets the other side of the apron. And just neatening that up there. And pushing that on with the brush. And then getting a tiny little ball of the modelling paste. After tidying up the front of his apron. And I'm just putting that in the centre at the back. And using the Dresden tool just to put a couple of little notches on it to make it look like it's been tied. Then rolling out another couple of thin sausage shapes for the last two little tie bits at the back. So one little bit on this side, giving it a little bit of shape at the bottom so it's not just falling straight down. And another bit on the other side. Again, giving it a little bit of a wiggle so it's not just straight down. Just rolled out another little bit of the tan, cutting along the top and the bottom to get some straight edges. Oh, That got a bit stuck there. Rolling it out again. A little bit of water. And this is going to be a little pocket on the front of his apron. So just brushing a bit of water where I want that to go. And placing that on top. Smoothing out around the sides. And then I'm using the stitching tool, as you see there. Just putting some extra little details around the sides and bottom of the pocket. And then down each side of his apron. The modelling paste was a tad soft here, so I couldn't properly roll it, which is why you can see me kind of dabbing the stitches on rather than rolling them in some places. And the last thing to do was just to attach his tool board. So I'm just double checking exactly where it touches the model when I lay it down. It was touching the top of his knee, the foot and the bottom of the anvil. I've placed an extra little bit of modelling paste and covered that in water just to make a kind of glue for the very top of the board. Put some extra water in there as well and really rub that in so that it was secure. Put extra water along the bottom of the board to attach it to the fondant underneath. And some down by the side of the shoe. And that is our Blacksmith and Farrier done. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you again on another tutorial. Thanks from Gemma at Cakes.